This is simply beyond reason. Iranian missiles hit Tel Aviv and Haifa, two cities in Israel with the largest Russian population. But the Russian government is defending Iran. Not only that, there are strong suspicions that the drones used by Iran were sent by Moscow. What's wrong with Russia? How important is Iran in Russia's eyes that Putin has to take the plunge and threaten to get involved in a war bezopasnosti organization obedineni Nazi? Nespovosurovana absolutno agresija protivna ne I meet pod soboi nikaki osnovani I nikaki apravla. We are talking about the history of the country. We are talking about the history of the country. This video reveals how the Kremlin is both a silent player and a major actor in the Iran-Israel conflict. Israel plays a geopolitical pawn on the Middle East chessboard that is almost undetected by Western radar. What is the real motivation? Is Russia a true friend of Iran to fight against Western domination, or is Russia just taking advantage and making Iran its proxy in fighting the United States and NATO? As the skies of the Middle East fill with missiles and Israeli defense systems such as the Iron Dome and David Sling are tested by a wave of Iranian ballistic attacks, Moscow has responded with caution and determination. President Vladimir Putin has called the Israel-Iran conflict a consequence of the failure of Western policies and warned that Russia will not stand idly by if this escalation continues. But make no mistake, Russia's support for Iran is not a sudden occurrence. The two countries signed a long-term strategic partnership agreement earlier this year to expand military cooperation and intelligence exchanges. Independent media and observers have even noted an increase in Russian military cargo plane traffic to Tehran in the past week, an indication that logistical coordination is underway. Unlike the United States, which eventually entered the war to defend Israel, Putin sees this conflict as a strategic opportunity to expand Russia's influence in the region. But how far will Russia really get involved? Although it has not deployed troops or expressed open military support, Russia has played a key role behind the scenes in strengthening Iran's position in the conflict against Israel. That support comes in the form of diplomacy, intelligence, and strategic commitments that cannot be ignored. Diplomatically, Russia has emerged as the protector of Iran's narrative in international forums. In various official statements, Moscow has accused the escalation of the conflict of being the result of Western military provocation and has strongly criticized American operations in the Middle East. Iran even denied that Russia provided support for Iran's retaliatory airstrikes on U.S. bases in Qatar. This suggests that strategic coordination may be deeper than it appears on the surface. In addition, Moscow remains adamant about continuing its support for Iran's civilian nuclear program. Amid Western pressure, Russia has reiterated its position that Iran's nuclear project is peaceful and legal under the IAEA agreement. Rosatom officials have even visited Iran's nuclear facilities on a recent technical mission. This strengthens the signal that cooperation will not stop despite increasing international pressure. As the conflict escalates, it was reported that at least 2 Russian military cargo planes had landed in Tehran within 48 hours of Iran's retaliatory attack on Israel. Although details of the cargo were not disclosed, intelligence observers assessed that the shipments likely contained drone components, electronic systems for precision missiles, and signal jamming equipment or jamming systems. This strengthens the suspicion that Russia is actively helping to strengthen Iran's defense infrastructure through logistics channels that are gray zone in international law are considered quite legitimate, but politically high risk. Although the Russian government has not confirmed the assistance and support, the tone and message that was more blatant came from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who made a fiery statement. In his viral tweet, he stated that every missile that landed in Tel Aviv was a boom for a more balanced world order. This can be interpreted as open support for Iran's military action and strong criticism of the United States' hegemony in the region. Medvedev is not the official voice of Russia, but his voice is considered to represent Russia's direction and policy. With the increasingly intense flow of information and logistics between Moscow and Tehran, it is clear that Russia is not just a spectator in this conflict, but a strategic partner that plays a crucial role in the shadows. Although Moscow's rhetoric seems to side with Iran, Russia's concrete actions in the Iran-Israel conflict show a more cautious approach, if not ambiguous. Behind the diplomatic support and anti-Western rhetoric, we can suspect that Russia remains reluctant to get too involved in this conflict, especially if the escalation directly targets regional interests or the Russian diaspora population. One example is Moscow's offer of limited military assistance to Tehran earlier this week, which was flatly rejected by Iran. The offer included the delivery of surveillance aircraft and additional defensive missile systems. But Iran rejected it because it was considered not in accordance with operational needs on the ground and too conditional. This shows the difference in tactical perceptions between the two countries. Furthermore, the strategic defense agreement between Russia and Iran that was announced last year turned out to be limited and would only be activated if one party faced a direct existential threat. In the context of an attack on Israel, this fact has not been considered relevant enough by Moscow to be realized operationally. Another thing that strengthens Russia's caution is the fact that more than 1 million Israelis are of Russian or Soviet descent or origin, including hundreds of thousands who live in Tel Aviv and Haifa, two cities that are now the main targets of Iranian missiles. Observers conclude that Moscow cannot act carelessly when many ethnic Russians are right in the line of attack. Rather than direct intervention, Russia seems to prefer playing in the gray zone. That is, being active enough to maintain its influence in Tehran, but passive enough not to lose its diplomatic foothold in Israel. Is this not strong enough to conclude that Russia's support for Iran is half-hearted support? Let's continue with the current situation where a ceasefire between Iran and Israel has been agreed. What will happen to military cooperation between Russia and Iran in the future? Will it continue to compete with the dominant Western powers or evaporate along with de-escalation in the region? The closest factor that can be linked is whether the ceasefire can be permanent or can change back to being heated at any time. However, apart from these two possibilities, there is an important foundation that has been around for a long time. Namely, Moscow has shown its willingness to transfer combat drones and medium-range ballistic missile technology to Tehran, part of an asymmetric military assistance package that does not involve major offensive weapons systems, such as combat agents or nuclear weapons. This position is consistent with Russia's official stance of refusing to open up export routes for nuclear technology or advanced fighter jets to Iran, although the pressure of conflict in the Middle East is increasing. So it can be said that in the future military cooperation between Russia and Iran is expected to continue to grow. However, it remains within the limits of very careful geopolitical calculations. The fact that Russia and Iran's defense, which was previously limited to intelligence exchanges and joint exercises, is now slowly shifting into an active defense agreement against external aggression. In a secret document leaked to the Iranian media, it was stated that Russia would provide open military assistance if Iran was directly attacked by a major power such as the United States or NATO. A similar model was recently approved by Moscow and Pyongyang in the fact of North Korea's Russian defense. Interestingly, most of the Iranian-made drone technology used in OTP-3 turned out to have avionic components that were identical to the 2010s generation Russian-made systems, including the guidance system and the intercept avoidance system. This shows that the Iran-Russia military collaboration is not only technical logistics, but also a deep cross-decade technology transfer. If this trend continues, Iran could become an alternative production base for the Russian drone system. This is a strategic symbiosis amidst global economic isolation. But one thing that is still anticipated by the West is that this axis will not be limited to Moscow-Tehran, but will also strengthen more concretely to the strategic axis of Moscow, Tehran, and Beijing. In the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Regional Security Forum or SEO, the defense ministers of Iran and China agreed to deepen military integration with Russia as the main counterweight to the Western Bloc. Iran is now in the orbit of the Eurasian power that is trying to shift the global dominance of the United States, but still maintain its autonomy in taking tactical military steps. This cooperation may not produce a formal military alliance in the near future, as many expect to be a rival to NATO. But it is enough to create a collective deterrence that can shake the power map in the Middle East and the position and role of Russia. They are the silent players who are the most strategic.